Hello, my name is Claire Clancy, and this is the final project for Big Data and Analytics in Marketing and Insurance. The background to this data: a large retailer in Ireland is considering moving into the health insurance market. They currently sell home and marketing insurance. They wish to offer the following product: low-cost health insurance for 25 to 35-year-olds. The data comes from dunnhumby. I have used 5 weeks data, 1 million rows in each week, and I took a random sample of 20% from each week. The data was analysed using RStudio, using Summary, Reshape2 and Google Viz. Now we will go to RStudio and see how I imported the data and did the summary statistics. I use this code here to read in the data, and then I created a random sample of 20% for each week. The rbind command was used to bind the data, and then it was made into a data frame. Then I saved the file to my C drive so that I could read it if RStudio crashed on me, or just if I had to close my computer and come back. I set the seed to 100. Unfortunately, I had quite a lot of the summary statistics completed before I set the seed, so if you redo the analysis, you may not get exactly the same results as I have. Summary for the data file called 5 weeks was used to identify the summary statistics for the data set. We have here the shop week, shop date, the shop hour. That's head. Okay, let's look at summary. The quantity varied from 1 to 657. The shop was opened, that's the quantity per basket. The shop hour was open from 8 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And the spend varied. Okay, as you will see, these are a little bit different from the results in my analysis. So we'll just go back to what I've been using, because this was the original summary data. So we have the shop hours open from 8 AM until 9 PM. The quantity varied from 1 item to 275 items. The spend varied from 0 to 484 euros. We have customer price sensitivity. I must go here and find out what that is. So we have less affluent, 22% of baskets were less affluent, 36% were mid-market, and 21% were up-market. Okay, but we see here that 19% were not assigned a customer price sensitivity. Equally, customer life cycle, 10% is old age, 5% older family, 21% other, 6% pensioner, 11% young adult, and 17% young family. And again, almost 30% of the customer life stage data were not categorized. We can come down here and we can actually look at some of the statistics, the summary statistics: spend, day and hour. So if I go into I can run a box plot. So first of all, I'm going to run a box plot of the customer life stage by the spend. And we see that we have an outlier, and it's very difficult to see what else is happening. So what I decided to do was to identify the 95% quartile, and then I took this away. Okay, so now what I've done is I'm going to create 3 box plots, but the spend is for the 0 to 95th percent quartile. And I'm going to use this command here so that I get all 3 on the same sheet. And we can see from this data that what I'm going to do is I'll bring it into OR. We can zoom here. That pensioners, they shop earlier in the day. The uncategorized shop later in the day. We have similarities between older families and young families, and young adult and older adult. Pensioners tend to spend a little bit less than the other categories, but we have weekday by life stage, and we see there's no variation in weekday. Now, I'll just go back to my report and I'll see what else I was doing. So the objectives were to identify young adult and young family customers within the customer data set, profile those customers using categories such as time they shop, day of the week, spend, and affluence. Compare young adult and young family customers with population percentages. As identified, we have quite a lot of missing data. And I looked at reclassifying this data. Now, how I did this was I said I would look at the summary statistics. How I got the summary statistics was I created subsets of the data. So first of all, I identified YA, which are young adult. 00 I identified as the blank data. To make sure I'm recording here. Yes. And then what I'm able to do is look at, say, the sensitivity, summary of the sensitivity for each of these. The results I brought into Excel just to make them a little bit nicer. I have them in the appendix. And we will see here what the spend is for each of the life cycles, what the basket type is for each life cycle, and the basket dominant missions, so whether they're fresh, grocery, mixed, non-food. You may wonder, why am I doing this when it's insurance that we're selling? The reason I did this was I wanted to see if I could reclassify the data. If I could say that, say, the blank data were really young families, or perhaps the blank data, if I could find similarities between the customers in the blank data and customers that were maybe older adult, young adult, pensioner. In the end, I didn't have sufficient evidence to identify, to reclassify the unclassified data. I even looked at the products, and how I did this was I used a reshape. Now, where do we have it here? Yes. Okay, so what I did is I used reshape to identify the product frequency. So what I have here is, for each product. So in this case, I was identifying the blank data, and I was looking what was their product code, and then I created a frequency table with that data. But what I wanted to do then was I wanted to get the top 10. So what I did was I used the reshape to, and I used melt. And what this did was it actually gave me a lovely little value. Oops, what's that? Oh yes, I had to do that again. I was able to use the tail of it. And you can see here that this is the 00 category, and these are the top 10 products within this category. We find here this product comes out with almost all of, as a top category for almost all of the different life stages. I reckon it's probably bread or milk. So if we look here, we can see some of these categories. So this is the big one. You can see here right across the board, it's one of the top categories. From the summary statistics, I didn't have enough evidence to suggest that I could recategorize the 00 candidates or baskets. What I would suggest is that a further analysis is done using market basket analysis or cluster analysis to see if this data could be reclassified. Instead, I moved on and okay, so here are some of the categories that I found. So analysis of basket type by customer life cycle. We identified older family and younger family have very similar basket types. 48% have full baskets, 15% have a small shop, 37% have top-ups. Again, all of this was done to see if I could reclassify the data. So we get back to our objectives were identify young adult and young family customers within the customer dataset. Profile those customers using categories such as time they shop, day of the week, spend, and affluence. Compare young adult and young family customers with population percentages. So we've identified that we can't reclassify the data. So what do we do next? Then what we do is we identify young adult and young family customers within the customer dataset, profile these customers, and compare young adult and young family customers with population percentages. Can we recategorize blank and other baskets? No. So now we look at customer life stage as a percentage of the total customer base, and this is identified below. So young adult are identified as 11%, young family are identified as 17%. Combined, they make 28% of our customer base. Now this is interesting because I used CAO data. If I just do this here. So percentage. Okay. Now, if we look here, we identify, so what we've done, the summary statistics suggest, so we have decided that we cannot recategorize the blank and other baskets. We identify that young adult account for 11% of the dataset, young family account for 17% of the dataset. Combined, they make up 28% of the dataset. If we look at this data by region, we identify that young adult and young family combined make up between 27 and 29% of the dataset. So the next step was to look at this data as a proportion of, in comparison to the percentage of 25 to 35-year-olds, between 18 and 24% of the dataset in each county. I've identified this as, I've taken away people who are less than 20 years old because I reckon they're probably not buying health insurance and they're probably not buying products. We have a dataset called states.1, which shows each county, the population in Ireland, and the customer population. And then I do this lovely bit of code. And what happens is, voila, we have got, for each county, we identify the percentage population and percentage customer in each of these counties. So these counties here are counties which don't have any stores. The outcome is that young adult and young family make up a greater proportion of the customer base than the population percentage of 25 to 35-year-olds. 18% is the average target population in Ireland. The average target population in the customer database is 28%. I suggest running promotions between the hours of 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. and there is no preferred day for running promotions, as every day is equally important.